Hello, welcome to Food and Climate. Today, the subject is agriculture and climate change. And we're very honored to have as a guest here a state senator from Georgia, United States, Kim Jackson. Welcome, Kim.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Kim Jackson, you have been now for 7 months in the Senate of Georgia. And can you tell me a little about which subjects are you focusing on in your work?
Sure. One of the reasons why you invited me here is because I've been focusing a lot on farming, specifically on Black farmers here in Georgia in the Southwest. I'm a multiple generation Black farmer here in the South. It's near and dear to my heart, both as a family, but also because you can't live if you can't eat. Food matters. So that's been a big issue for me. And then I've also been working on some criminal justice reform issues here, along with issues of protecting women and children. The bill that I just got passed was one that helps to protect people who have been victims of stalking.
Okay, so you have already achieved a law in Georgia.
I have. Despite being in the minority party, they let me pass a bill. So I'm really excited about that.
Congratulations. So there is a big change in the United States since Biden was president, and he, among other things, has a goal of carbon neutrality in the United States until 2050 and a 50% reduction until 2030 in the country. But even if United States have good ambitions, a lot of the practical stuff are also done on the state level. Could you say something about what kind of policies could be implemented there and what kind of policies you are suggesting?
Yeah, Georgia used to, and I actually benefited from this. We used to have a very strong incentive in terms of a tax break for people who bought electric cars. So my wife and I benefited from that incentive, and you save $5,000 or $7,000 or so on your taxes by buying an electric car. Many years ago, about 5 years ago, if you drove around the state of Georgia, you would see lots and lots of electric cars because of that incentive. And unfortunately, we got rid of that program, but I'm really working with others, including some Republicans who are interested in that, of bringing that incentive back. Part of that is that we have an electric car battery plant that's being built right now as we speak in northern Georgia. And so we need to bring more electric cars to Georgia. Some other things that we've been working on here is that we find our highways to be a great space to put in solar farms. So we already have kind of a practice site, if you will, where alongside the highway, before you get off on the exit, there's this big open spaces. And we've put solar panels there and put native plants underneath them to help to grow, to encourage pollination and more of a healthy environment there. It's the first one that we've done. I foresee us doing much more solar here in the coming years. And we're going to need some more incentives in terms of some tax incentives to help that happen. And then the other piece of this that's related to solar, on the top of my house, I've also benefited once more from a tax incentive. It was a federal government tax incentive that helped me to be able to afford to put solar panels on top of my house. I'm really hoping that as a state, we would implement some incentives there on that level too, so that more homeowners, and particularly what we need is to see, there are people who are struggling to pay their electric bills. And heretofore, solar panels have only been affordable, like the only people who could afford solar panels are middle class and upper middle class people. But the people who need them most are people who are experiencing kind of lower wages. And so I'm actually hopeful that our state will implement a new program that will allow for lower income households to be able to implement solar.
So you mean that right now they're trying to Biden and Democrats to have a new subsidy for solar and wind. So you mean these could come on top of that?
That's right, right. So oftentimes that's how we encourage people in states is to kind of stack on top. So you get the federal benefit, and then you also get the state benefit, which ultimately saves a significant amount of money for people.
Is Georgia an important state for fossil fuels, or is yes?
So Georgia has the largest coal electric plant in the world. um, One of the largest, I think we're in the top three
Yes.
for burning coal to create electricity. So we don't produce the fossil fuel, right? We don't produce the coal, but we burn more of it than anywhere else in the United States. So it's really important that Georgia began to think about and convert to things like wind and solar energy. That's why I'm pointing that out. And we also are in the process of building a nuclear power plant, which will be able to offset, and we can have a conversation about nuclear, but it would help to offset some of those carbon emissions that we're seeing from our coal-fired plant.
Actually, couldn't the nuclear power be some kind of consensus alternative sometimes between Republicans and Democrats because it's neither renewable or fossil?
Yeah, I think that's how we got it on track, was that it was somewhat of a compromise. Of course, people still maintain lots of concerns about the safety of it, but as it relates to the, in terms of carbon offsets and things like that, nuclear is relatively, it's a whole lot cleaner than our coal plant. That's what we know for sure.
Okay, great. So you think you can are the interest for maintaining these big plants or this big plant too strong, or do you think that the price, the market will solve this problem and you get rid of the coal?
Yeah, I don't think that the market alone will solve this problem. It's going to require bipartisan support. There is a movement among conservatives. They're called Conservatives for Conservation. I think that's their name here in Georgia. And they have some leading Republicans who have joined alongside, particularly invested in initiatives around more solar. I mean, we're in Georgia, which is in this kind of the southern region of the United States. So we have a lot of solar available to us. We get a lot of sunshine. From my house, I'll just say, I produce enough solar during the summertime to not have to pay a bill at all. So that's how much sun we get here. So there are conservatives who are prepared to do that. We've had a hard time finishing building our nuclear power plant. We are millions and millions of dollars in debt for it, and still not online. And so I think because of that long delay, coal has really been able to maintain its foothold along with natural gas. That's another major source of energy here in Georgia. So until we can get our nuclear power plant online, I think that coal is going to be king or queen. I'm not sure what her gender is here in Georgia.
Okay, very interesting. Well, let's go on with agriculture and this newspaper, Food and Climate, which is on mat.klimat.nu, is a lot about the need to increase the consumption of vegetables and decrease the consumption of animal food, especially meat and dairy products. And is there any kind of cooperation in this subject, or yes, is there some kind of movement towards this such a development?
So I will say here in Georgia, we are the chicken capital of the country. There we produce more eggs and slaughter more chickens than I think anywhere else in the nation. And so people will tell you now, leave my chickens alone. So there's not a movement to get rid of chickens. A significant number of legislators who serve with me are dairy cow farmers. They're beef and dairy farmers. So there's not a desire really to move away from those types of industries. So instead, my tactic has been to at least bring alongside more produce producers into to support them. So specifically with Black farmers, 97% or so of Black farmers are produce farmers. They don't have land. They don't have the money that's actually required to produce meat and dairy. And so the default has been that they produce produce. So every time we invest more in Black farmers here in Georgia, we in turn invest more in produce and healthy produce, fruits and vegetables that ultimately get into our school systems and help make our kids stronger, help us all be more healthy.
Okay. And when it comes to the soil, I mean, there are ways to keep more carbon in the ground, in the soil. What can be done there, you think?
Yeah, so I'm actually working with a group right now to introduce a bill that would talk about providing for a healthy soil. Georgia hasn't updated that legislation around how we monitor soil management issues since the 1900s. And so it's a really old code section. So my first thing is just to try to introduce the notion to the assembly that we need to be thinking about soil health. And the bill that I'm working with here, it doesn't actually dictate what that means. It really just kind of introduces the idea and the concept, because not only can we keep more carbon in our soil, but we can also keep our soil in place. Right in Georgia, we have a problem with runoff and our rivers being filled with the soil that we would prefer was in the ground. Right, we have to continue to dig out our trenches and dig out our rivers and dredge them because of runoff. And so there's a twofold. For me, I'm very much invested in healthy soil because it matters for us for produce, it matters for carbon emissions, but it also will help keep our lakes, our rivers and streams cleaner, which is something that's a high priority for us here in Georgia.
One of many ways to keep more CO2 in the soil is plow-free agriculture or something near to that. Do you have farmers who practice that?
We have a few. The sustainability movement around farming, particularly for large farms, has been slow in coming, but we do see few. I helped appropriate funds to support farmers in Southwest Georgia through a project that's called the Southwest Georgia Project. And one of their initiatives is that they help produce farmers learn how to do more sustainable type farming. So, if you've been like me, you're a 6th generation farmer, you've been plowing for 6 generations, like that is kind of that's what we know to do.
Yes.
And so the program that I helped appropriate funds for will introduce some new techniques that would help move people away from plowing and more to some layering and composting and really helping to develop more safe, more healthy soil.
Sounds great. And is there a lot of demand for vegetable food in Georgia? Do you see a change, a development?
There is a movement now for people to eat more healthy, more natural and more locally grown foods. So we've created, and through the Department of Agriculture, a program called Georgia Grown. And, if you go to the market, I think people are beginning to get trained to look for that sticker. It's a peach and it says Georgia Grown, so that people know where their food comes from. We've really begun to develop quite significantly tourism business, where there are about 28 farms here in Georgia that are on, kind of on this map, and you can go and tour them and, pick your own crops. And just it's another way of helping people get closer to food and closer to the earth so they understand where their food comes from. So that's a growing movement. We're also seeing, so I work in a metro area, right? I work in Atlanta, which is, kind of the big city here in Georgia. And what we're starting to see now is a movement and a commitment by school districts to bring in produce, to bring in fresh vegetables, fresh fruit to our children in their schools. And that is a huge improvement. It's, kids have to learn to like vegetables.
Yes.
But they're beginning that work, and they're also doing that work by starting some community gardens on school grounds. And so what we found is that, when a 5-year-old helps to plant the green beans, and they see them grow up, they're more likely to eat the green beans when they get put on their table. And so we're seeing more and more of those kind of small community gardens or learning and teaching gardens showing up at our schools to help promote eating of fruits and vegetables.
Okay. Kim Jackson, thank you so much for this very interesting, actually, interview. And I wish you the best of luck in, you are obviously a very creative and driven politician. It's obvious that you have a lot of experience from before when you come to the Senate, right?
Right. Yes. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And thank you for spreading the good news about the importance of caring well for our earth. While we may be separated by an ocean, what we know is that no matter where you are in the world, it impacts our clean air, it impacts our water, it impacts our lives. So I'm grateful to partner with you across the pond on this issue.
Thank you so much. And you are welcome to see our videos here, interviews. We try to produce every month a few interviews, and you visit matochklimat.nu and you can see all the articles there. All of them can be read in English also with the translate button, and we will come back with interviews soon again. So thank you for being with us.